in my journey, started as a civil engineer. There was a lot of ego involved. Every facet, every kind of like area in the military has its own culture. And as a civil engineer, you're a wrench turner, like you're a grunt essentially. So there is a lot of armor. When I went from being a civil engineer to an Airman Leadership School instructor, I got this wonderful opportunity to bring these students into the room. And I had like fellow instructors and stuff, and they had rooms and they had students, but I got to take my 16, come into a room, close that door, and set the bar high, introduce myself, what my standards are, what my expectations are. And then once I do that, I had this opportunity to go, listen, I love what I do and I enjoy it. And we have a curriculum to follow, but I want to share my stories and I want to hear yours. And because they recognize that, they said to themselves, well, this is going to be different. This guy isn't just like a super military like instructor dude. He's, I would share stories. I would share poetry. And these guys are going, this guy's a tech sergeant and he's sharing poetry as a part of the lesson. It was different. I was inspired so much as a kid. I mean, Dead Poet Society, right? Robin Williams. All these movies that went, it's just beautiful, dude.
Everyone's nodding their head.
So, those were the biggest sources of inspiration for me. I had teachers in high school that were like, they just knew how to hold the attention of the crowd. They would sing, they would be serious, they would be light, they'd be compassionate. And I'm like, wow, that is the full spectrum of what it means to be a mentor. I wanted to go beyond being an instructor or teacher. I wanted to be a mentor to them. And being a mentor meant I know how to connect with you. So that was the first platform I had to give me this chance to say, I'm going to take the armor off and I'm going to show you who I really am. And people really gravitated towards that.
I noticed that other guys in the space, like Jocko Willink and kind of even Joe Rogan, he's not an ex-military guy, but, super into MMA, kind of, manly man. I feel like they've also had their moments of like sharing poetry or being vulnerable, and it's very interesting to see.
Yeah.
People seem to respond well to it.
Definitely. Well, the people that are going to respond well to it are the people who are intended to hear it. The other people that may not respond well, or it just doesn't resonate with them, that's okay. That's just okay. They're going to hear what they need to hear from somewhere else or someone else. And I was just like, that's okay. Because if I have 16 students, if 10 value the message, and then of those 10, 1 or 2 truly got something life-changing out of it, did my job. If I treated it like music, I was doing the right thing. You play some music when you're with people, not everyone's going to love your taste in music. That's just the reality of life, right? But if I get so hung up on this idea that, oh my God, he doesn't like it, she doesn't like it, like I'm going to fail. Now I start overthinking. And then we get into this area of analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I want to please everybody. I was such a big people pleaser in the military when I was a younger airman and stuff. Even as like a young staff sergeant, I was just like, I want to make everyone feel good, but I'm not selling ice cream. I'm supposed to be a leader, but I'm trying to sell ice cream. Like it just didn't work. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to win with everybody. So I just need to stop giving such a shit. And the people who really want to connect will connect with me. And I'm going to go down this path where everyone that I'm intended to meet and the experiences that I was intended to go through are all going to happen in the exact timing that they're going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even feel like this is something that a lot of women are trying to navigate right now. I think with, more women in the workforce, rising the ladders, being in leadership roles, I think you hear a lot about trying to find that balance of, I think women tend to be more people pleasers. They tend to, want to be a little bit more nurturing. But when you're a leader, that may or may not be the case. It may not be appropriate, or just it might be a waste of time to constantly be worrying about what people think. Yeah. So I know that that's something that at least a lot of my girls that I talk to, that's something they're trying to navigate right now.
Yeah, when it comes to leadership, I think that there is a delicate balance between being a nurturer, being a mentor, being a manager, and then being someone who's able to just say, it's not time to feel, it's time to do. And then being that person who has all these tools on their tool belt is what earns you respect. Because if I'm able to deploy the right tactic or deploy the right course of action in the right situation, that's going to lead us maybe as a team, maybe as a couple, whatever it may be. Leadership could be parental. Leadership could be spousal. Leadership could be a whole lot of things. But if I have the ability, the knowledge, and the wherewithal to deploy the right thing in the right situation, and I have what I would call definiteness of decision, knowing how to
Mm.
choose something and stick to that thing, and only being able to change my decision based on new knowledge or new facts, I think that is a trait that a lot of people don't have nowadays.
So commitment.
Commitment.
I would
Not only
completely
commit.
agree.
Oh fuck, dude. We as millennials are commitment phobic. Like no one, everyone wants to. I got to be able to ghost when I want to ghost, right?
Yes.
Like, got to be able to eject when it's necessary, right? I'm like, damn,
Yes.
like that's a lot of my peers. So not only are we very commitment phobic, but we as millennials especially, I feel like so focus, I think, is the new IQ, right? Motherfuckers not
Yes,
focused
we were talking
nowadays.
about that.
Yeah,
It blew
like
my mind when you said that.
it's like we have this all these, there's so much competition for our eyeballs and things going on. If you're able to just like focus on something, it's like Charlie Munger said, right? Take a simple idea and take it very seriously. If you're able to do that, you're going to become someone in the world. You're going to become someone successful. You're going to become the person that you want to become because the opportunities show up, the people show up, just like how my goal card. I just took a very simple idea and I took it very seriously. Just said, this is the thing. This is my goal. I just went after
It's
it.
so funny you're saying that. I feel like I've had this serendipitous string of things that have happened. Like just over the last couple weeks, I've watched a few documentaries, just,
Yeah.
whatever, that's what you do. And every single documentary I've seen or event that I've gone to or whatever has essentially been someone who was so focused on something and essentially achieved greatness out of it. Like
it.
Free Solo. I watched like a documentary on master sommeliers, on, like all these, what was the other one? I can't quite remember, but it's essentially people that became masters at what they do. But their one trait was focus and
Yes.
concentration. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's so hard for people to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it, right? Like, what is the antithesis of all that focus? It's Instagram. Because you just scroll, and basically what it's telling you is, hey, Michelle, I need you to give a shit about this. Okay, now I need you to give a shit about this. Now I need you to give a shit
Yes.
about this. And it's like all these different things that we're supposed to be giving a shit about. When the people who have struck some gold in their life, that have pretty much manifested what it is that they came here to do, have lived out their gifts, they just said, okay, all these things, they're cool, they're important, but this is my thing. This is my purpose. This is what I came here to do. And I'm going to go all in on that thing. Is it hard? Yes, because you're just bombarded
Yeah.
by all this crap every day.
So what do you recommend for people that, I mean, we're all living in it now, and some of us have to be in it. So let's say use the social media example. Like some people have to be in that for, say, business, or it's the new marketing, method, or whatever it is. If you have to be in that crazy environment, like what do you suggest for maintaining your focus and not allowing yourself to get too carried away?
I guess when it comes to social media, that's one of the principles in my whole concept of leading yourself. And one of the things I talk about is guarding your mind. And I try to guard my mind from what I would call the deception epidemic and the marketing holocaust. So if I have to use social media as a means for my business, let's say as a speaker, trainer, consultant, I am branding myself on Instagram. Well, if I might use Instagram to push my content out, I want to guard what's coming in too. So I've done like doing an audit on what it is that I follow. That's helped me out tremendously. Just like look, if I go down, if I'm just scrolling and I'm looking at things, and if that thing is not serving me or if it's not positive, it's got to go. Like it's got to go. It's something, if it's distracting me from the main thing, I got to remove it. And not only that, but some of the other things is like, what about the influence that you have around you, right? Like, are you guarding your mind from the people that might have good intentions for you, but their advice is just, it's counterintuitive to what it is that you want. It might come in the form of social media, and it might come in the form of friends and family in your life. So guarding your mind is something that I would say gets you away from all the shoulds in life. Everyone's saying, hey, you should be doing this, or you should do that. Well, do you know enough about me and what it is I'm after to be able to say what I should and shouldn't be doing? A lot of people don't. And a lot of well-intentioned people don't. on social media and face to face. Like, I love my mother, I love my grandmother, I love everyone in my family. But when they're talking about shoulds, I just wall off because they don't understand me. They don't understand what it is that I'm trying to do with my life. And that's, you could say that's no fault of their own, or you could say maybe it is. I don't know, but I try not to care too much about that. So this is all a big game of knowing that the fucks I give are finite and I'm going to die one day. So I better give a fuck about the right things. And all the things I see on social media and all the things that kind of catch my attention and take me down the rabbit hole, I'm pouring some fucks into those things, right? So yeah, it's one thing to use social media to push content out. It's another thing to understand what's coming in. Like understanding, hey, maybe this isn't right for my mind. Maybe using this time to just listen to music or listen to an audiobook or something might be beneficial.
How would you recommend navigating that space with people in your life, friends or family, that you feel like might not have as fruitful of a relationship as you would like?
Well, when it comes to friends and family, I think, and you could probably vouch for this too, the older we get, the smaller that circle gets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think
We've talked about that
we
a
let a
lot.
little bit more people in for some reasons, and we kind of like push other people out for other reasons. And it's not because we're like bad people or they're bad. I think one of the things that happens is we tend to bring morality into it. It's not good or bad. It's just, does this serve or does this not serve? And when it comes to friends and family, I love my family. I've been back for a few months and I'm kind of like full on my family. Like, it's just too much, right? Like, I spent the last 11 years kind of independent and doing my own thing and having FaceTime and writing messages back and forth. And I got to control the amount of exposure. And that was beneficial to my mental health. That was beneficial to my journey. And now being back for a few months, everyone wants to see you. And that's great. I want to see everyone too. But spending too much time in their space, because energy is contagious. The vibrations that you put out, that I put out, the frequency that we produce, it puts out a signal. And sometimes the signal that some friends and some family put out, it's not that great. It's just somewhere, it's on a different frequency. So did you see what I just did? I actually said I brought morality into it, good or bad. It's not good or bad. It's just not in line. It's not congruent with what it is that I
Absolutely,
want.
because they're on their own path and you're
Yeah.
on your own path.
That's
And
it.
if they connect, then they connect. And if they don't, then they
Yes,
just don't.
exactly. So if I'm trying to distance myself from that energy, I know that it's not because it's a good or bad thing. It's not because I don't like you. It's just because we're not in line. Now, how you choose to take that is your choice. If you don't like me, that's your choice. I got choices too. I got the dignity of choice. How you feel about me is your choice. How I feel about you is my choice. If you don't like me, that's yours. I can still choose to like you, but still have some distance. And that is maturity as well.
It's so true what they say of you are the culmination of the 5 people that you spend
Big time.
most of your
Yes.
time with. Back to what you said, the older you get, the more true that is.
Yeah.
You know, I think when you're younger, you kind of just want the numbers. Like you want to have lots of friends and
Yeah.
a big social life.
We
or
put people in the
whatever it
hopper.
is. Yeah. And a hopper?
Yeah, essentially, like when we're younger, we have so many friends, and then in the hopper, it kind of funnels. And now,
Yeah.
in our 30s and stuff, it's like there are far less people.
It's like I just don't have, well, first of all, I just like care less.
Yeah. That's good.
And second of all, like I just don't, the time, you're getting your priorities in order.
Yeah.
And sometimes those priorities aren't like just having a big, who am I going to get brunch with this weekend? Like, your priorities are different.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to ask you more about the 6 principles, because I know this is one in your Leading Yourself segment. But before that, I did want to ask you about how your time in the military has affected your approach to what you do, because we talked about how there were parts of the military that you had to break away from to do what you
Yeah.
do. But is there anything that you took away from that time that helped you with discipline, motivation, anything?
One of the things that I've really held on to, because there are things that I want to hold on to and there are things that I don't think serve anymore, so the credibility markers are pretty important. I know that for me personally, I don't really care about the rank that I achieved in the military. It was just a reflection. Like, your rank does not say anything. It doesn't mean who you are. It doesn't say anything about you. It just represents what your commitment is and where you stand in the bigger scheme of things towards the mission. That's it. It does not say anything about my Mahyar Rostami. I know that to some people it means a lot. And the awards, the decorations, that means a lot. If that means a lot, happy days. That's your preference. That's your choice. Not good or bad. So the credibility markers were important for me to gain credibility with the audiences that I speak to on a one-to-one basis or the group settings and stuff. Because I've always believed in this idea of like when you speak to people, when you train or whatever it may be in a video, whatever, I always follow that ethos, pathos, logos, meaning, hey, ethos, who are you? Because when people look at you, when you're speaking, when you're training, you got a podcast, a video, everyone is looking at myself, everyone's looking at who it is, and they're asking 3 questions all subconsciously. Number 1, who are you? Number 2, what do you have? Number 3, why should I care? So my military credentials or that discipline, people might not know what I did or what branch I was in, but when they think military, that schema goes, okay, there's some discipline there. There's
already a baseline.
Yeah, there's a basis.
Not just anyone can be in the military
Yes.
and for that long. And
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things. So the credibility markers were important for me. It helped me break into where I'm at now. The other things are, I think that one of the biggest things is I learned the principles of instruction in the military, and that really helped me kind of like pattern my approach for audiences outside of the military, for businesses and one-to-one stuff. And another thing is just, if we're talking about disciplines, have you ever read that book or have you ever like watched the speech? We had a great admiral in the military when I was in. His name was Bill McRaven. And Admiral McRaven, he gave his speech to the University of Texas at Austin, and he talked about the 10 things you can do to change the world. And he talked about the first principle is if you want to change the world, you make your bed every day. And everyone kind of laughed like, what? Why? And he had some really great stuff behind that. He basically said, you know, when you start your day and you start that day with a small accomplishment, that's going to make you feel good. And a little accomplishment actually turns into another accomplishment. And that accomplishment turns into another accomplishment. Compounding, right? You're starting out small. You just make your bed. And then he says, if by chance you have a bad day and you come home, you at least get to come home to a made bed.
Aww.
And it's a bed you made. Makes you feel pretty good about life, right?
Do you know Lewis House?
No.
He has a podcast called The School of Greatness, and he interviews, all people who have achieved greatness and whatever. And he was talking about this concept of making your own bed. And he was like, yeah, I realized at a certain point that I had to be more authentic with this. He's like, because I had a maid and she was just making my bed every morning.
Yeah.
And I had to finally tell her like, all right, I got to make my bed. I got to like have this thing. I got to actually, because the bed was made, but he didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could take someone else's accomplishment.
Yeah.
But so that was a big thing. I used to share that with my students too. It wasn't ever part of the curriculum or anything. I just said, dude, you got to start your day with an accomplishment. So that was a part of the discipline. Other things, timeliness. I mean, when it comes to the military works on time, right? And being back in LA just these past few months, like I'm coming back with 11 years after the Air Force. And like, if you're on time, you're late, like 15 minutes early to everything. And then I get to meetings and stuff, and it's supposed to start, say, 7:30 in the morning. People trickle in at like 8:15. I'm like, that's not all right. I don't, there's nothing you can tell me that can tell me that's all right.
But the traffic.
Right. So okay, how about leaving earlier? How about maybe understanding that there will be traffic and leaving early? How about plotting the route the day prior? I'm starting to realize like just basic things, prudence, being able to do things in a way that are beneficial for the future, right? If you were to tell me, hey, Mahyar, we're going to be on this show and we're going to start at 11 o'clock on Monday, I'd go, okay. And then what I would do is I'd say, okay, if I got to be there at 11 o'clock on Monday, what does 10 o'clock on Monday got to look like in order to be there at 11 o'clock on Monday? Okay, what is now, if that's what 10 o'clock needs to look like, what does 8 in the morning need to look like? And if that's what does the day prior need to look like in order for me to be there at 11 o'clock on Monday? Just working backwards, just rationing backwards. And I'm starting to realize most people don't do that. Like, it's some basic shit. Like, just if you got to be somewhere at some time, why don't you just say to yourself, okay, if I got to be there at this time, maybe going out too late on that Sunday night prior to Monday is not a good idea. But people just live like moment to moment. Is that good in a sense? Sure, being present is good. But if being present all the time is fucking up your future, then it's probably not good.
Yeah.
So that's a huge habit. I think, as human beings, if we just take myself, I take you, we just pull each other apart. We're just a bunch of habits. We're just stringed together. We're a bunch of paradigms. And a paradigm is just a bunch of habits. So some people just have a habit of being late. And if you kind of like dissect it, it's really just selfishness. It's just me saying, I value my time more.
Hmm.
And being there 15 minutes early is a waste of my time. I mean, there's no other way you could cut it. If you cared about the other person's time, you'd probably be there on time. So it's
Right.
just smaller things. So I think people do appreciate that level of discipline and value towards their time. There's so many, and we can talk about a
Yeah.
lot of different little things that have carried
Now,
over.
why do you think the military has been so successful at establishing this discipline culture? Because everyone that's in the military, I mean, it's like you either adhere to it or you're just not in the military.
Yeah.
But people come out, so you obviously been doing these habits for so long, so they're great habits for you. But like, why do you think they're so successful at having that structure?
So two parts. The first part is when you enter the military, you go through basic military training. You go to boot camp, and they break you down. They pretty much remove your identity from you. So you start there and you build up. And once your identity is
Mm.
removed, and it's kind of like a program. It's essentially like they are wiping the
The
program.
ego,
The
wiping the
ego,
ego.
yes, wiping the ego,
Mm.
absolutely. And then filling that thing with their principles and concepts. And if it's congruent with the military, then happy days. But even at as early as basic training, I remember when I went through basic training back, 12 years ago, you still had people who were like, yeah, I want to join the military. They get to basic training and someone gets in their face and they yell at them and they're like, hey, get out of my face. I don't like that. And it's okay.
I think that's what Jocko Willink maybe talks about is him getting to maybe basic training or wherever it was in the training. He's like, it was always the toughest guys that were out the first.
Yeah. The egos,
Yeah.
right? The ones that
Yeah.
had the most ego, that's probably going to be their biggest anchor, right? So start there. And then over that process, people always get weeded out. And then after basic training, going to your technical school or the place where you learn your MOS or your job in the military. And then people get weeded out there too. And eventually, when you get to the active duty military and you've got your basic training, your initial programming, you got your technical training, what you're going to do every day, and you arrive, you're ready. And then people still get weeded out there too, because you arrive and there is a standard. The military is all about standards and
Mm.
expectations and that discipline. If you ask a commander, any military commander, what their sole purpose is, they're going to tell you it's to maintain good order and discipline. That's it. That's the number one job, just maintaining good order and discipline. Everything else comes second to that. So the basic training process does prepare someone to follow and adhere to certain disciplines and values. And core values are another thing too. Every branch of our military have what we call core values, because you take 50 states and people that come from all corners of the world and you put them together. We can't just expect everyone to have the same values. So we got to say, hey, your values are
Mm.
cool. Awesome. Keep them if you want to, those personal values, but here are the ones we're going to adhere to. And for the Air Force, we got our three core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And everything happens in the spirit of those core values. And that's essentially what we're doing when we're creating values for ourselves. We're leading ourselves with those values. So when you get to the active duty military after your training and all the programming and stuff, as a supervisor in the military, as a non-commissioned officer, I had to hold the standard as a leader. I had to say, hey, this is okay. I'll stand for this, and this is what I won't stand for. And anyone who doesn't fall in line with the standards and expectations, we start low. The progressive discipline process starts slow. We just have a chat. Hey, what happened? Tell me about what happened. Why'd you do that? Oh, this is why I did that. Okay, hey, this is why I was wrong. Cool, got it. It happens again. All right, now it's not a one-way conversation. I can't have you doing that. And so it goes. If it happens again, it's not a conversation anymore. Now I got to write it down. I got to document it. If it happens again, now it's not like a counseling session. It's more of a wrist smack. And if the wrist smack doesn't work, then we just keep going down that progressive discipline process, kind of like stairs, until it's out of my hands. Well, maybe you don't want to be here. Maybe you can't follow the disciplines and the identity that the military is. And some people just can't. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had to be the person who has essentially escorted someone out to the main gate and said, okay, now give me your ID.
Wow.
Thanks a lot. And that's it. Because some people just don't want to remove the ego. You got to yield first. You got to be, when we're talking about, you got to be able to yield and say, you know what, you're right. And because you're giving me the feedback, you're looking at this objectively, I should probably take that feedback if I want to be an effective airman or if I want to achieve my goal. And that's another one of those things, the board of directors thing, though. I think we'll talk
Yeah.
about these six principles.
I really like the idea of standards. What do you recommend for people in just like regular everyday life that have their standards or they have their goals or whatever, but they don't have someone that's going to like kick them out of their life if they don't, show up on time or achieve their day to-do list, whatever that is.
So that's a great question. When it comes to standards, is it easier when you have someone mentoring you or holding you accountable? 100%. Absolutely. But what if you don't have someone day to day? Well, there are things that you can do until that person shows up. And I do believe that people will show up. But until a person shows up to help you, a mentor, a supervisor, a leader, an accountability partner, I would use, personally, my perspective is using some principles to follow. And those principles are what I would call leading myself. And I would cultivate these principles by experiences or reading books, whatever it may be, but having a core set of disciplines or a core set of principles to follow. So if no one is holding me accountable, the first thing I can do is I can have a goal. If I got a goal, if I write it down, just like that goal card, right? The one that I ripped off of my dash of my car. If I have no one holding me accountable, at least this is holding me accountable. Because like I said, if we went outside and we just approached 100 people and said, hey, what is your goal? Chances are about 90 of them won't be able to tell you their goal. And of the 10 that say, yeah, I got a goal and here it is, I would probably say maybe like 1 or 2 of them have that goal written down. If you write things down, they're guaranteed to happen 100%.
You think?
I will contest that every single day of my life until I'm dead on a hill. It will happen.
Just by writing it down.
Just by writing it down. But there are some questions that we got to ask. If I write something down and I am, number one, if I'm willing and I am able, that thing is going to happen. As long as I'm willing and I'm able, it's going to happen. So being able to write things, having a worthy ideal, just having a goal. If I have no one to hold me accountable, maybe it starts with the Post-it note on my mirror. Maybe it just starts with a goal card. Maybe it just starts on a notebook and saying, this is the thing I want to do. That's an accountability tool. And most people don't write things down. Those 90 out of 100, they don't write things down, I believe, because of the shit it's going to pull out of them in order for that to happen. Because it's going to pull some stuff out. And that's scary. That is unknown.
It really is scary because I've heard this concept as well, like put a Post-it on your mirror, whatever your goal is. But then those insecurities start creeping up. I'm like, well, but if I put it on my mirror, then anyone that goes in my bathroom is going to see that. And that's weird. Or like I'm going to put it on my computer, but then anyone that's there is going to see that. And then I have to talk about it. And that's, that's uncomfortable.
And for that, I would just say, hey, be fucking proud of your shit.
Yeah.
Who cares if someone doesn't like that? I had a fear too. If you told me to journal in the military, I'd be like, why? I got a journal now. As a grown man, I got to write things down, and I got some thoughts that I want to just like get on paper. Never would have thought I'd had some foo-foo shit like a journal, but it's necessary now. It is. Like I thought that was stupid at one point in my life because the belief was, just like you said, someone is going to find it laying around and go,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Ha! You wrote that? Zach, you wrote that shit? You bitch. Oh my God. Wow.
We're gonna edit out just that one little segment.
Let's take that one out.
That'll be your introduction to the episode.
Yeah, but that was my fear. I was like, you know what? If I write that thing down, someone's going to see it and they're going to think it's stupid. Well, I got to say to myself, it doesn't matter if they think it's stupid.
Back to the ego.
It's back to the ego. It's 100% back to the ego. So yeah, being able to write something down, having a goal, it's a necessary step in accountability.
Now, do you think handwriting it or can you type it out and print it out too? What do you think?
I'm a big advocate of writing it down, handwriting it, because every time, I wish I had my phone, every time you open up your phone, it's just like, it's different. It's different. You kind of associate it with a message, and a lot of the messages we send, we're not committed to. Like, it's just, there's a lot less commitment going on in the electronic device.
As well.
100%. You could change it. The level of commitment there is low. But when it's here, there's something that happened. You take a pen to paper, it's like you are tearing the veil of the universe, and it's like it's putting it there. Like it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I'm just like, that's just a thought. Whatever, I'm just gonna put it on my phone. It's not really a big deal. This is that, right? So I think writing it down by hand is necessary.
What do you recommend as far as a format for that? Do you recommend writing your goals in like present tense, in the future tense? Do you recommend writing the deadline down?
So the present tense is interesting because In the same way that you read the goal, it didn't just say, hey, I want to become a speaker trainer, businesses, leaders, future leaders, corporations all around the world. It said, I am so happy and grateful now that I am speaking and training
So you
businesses.
wrote a feeling
I wrote a
associated with it.
feeling.
Ooh.
Yes. And I wrote a feeling. And why did I do that? Well, here's why. I've always believed that writing causes thinking. Pretty simple. Thinking creates an image. We think in images. The image is produced and emotions are attached to the image. After emotions are attached, those emotions change the micro actions. The micro actions then affect the macro actions. And the macro actions create a reaction. Action, reaction becomes a result. We call that a result in life. So writing it down, but writing it in such a way that emotions are attached to that thing is what's going to change the results. Writing causes thinking. Thinking produces an image. Image gets attached to emotions. Emotions change the micro. Micro changes the macro. Macro causes a reaction. Action, reaction, result. So anything that you can do to make... When I wrote that down, July 24th, 2018, I was not speaking and training businesses, corporations, leaders, and future leaders. I was not physically doing that. Didn't know how to do it, didn't know what it looked like, just said, hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Again, most people don't do it. What? You're already doing it? You didn't do that. Well, you're stupid. And people do that, right? We have all these fears. But you know what I said? This is for me. This is not for anyone else. It's just for me. I'm already doing it, and I'm grateful that it's happening. And that puts me in a state, it increases my vibration. It gets me excited. I'm now excited that frequency and vibration increases. If we can assume that this concept is true, if we could just say that there is an ether, there's a universe, and in this ether, there are vibrations and frequencies of happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction, agony, guilt, shame, different frequencies, different emotions. If I write something down in such a way that increases my personal vibration or frequency to a level that aligns or harmonizes with what it is that I want, excitement, they're harmonized, now that thing comes to me.
The law of attraction.
Law of attraction. That's the conduit. That is the conduit. But using visualization to get me in that state of excitement, that is what this is used for. And being able to have that level of pretty much confidence in saying, I don't care what other people think about this. This is my life. This is my dream. This is who I want to become. I'm going to do it. So that accountability piece is super important.
You described it as a fantasy?
Yes, fantasy.
Why would you describe it that way? Because I think some people would think by describing it as a fantasy, it makes it seem a little more unattainable.
That's a good point. So one thing I talk about is when you got goals fall into different categories. You have what I would call A goals, B goals, and C goals. A goals are doing things that we already know how to do. We just know how to do them. And we know how to do them, and they bring about the same result. I go to the gym. I do the same workout. I'm not getting any bigger. I'm not getting any stronger. It's just maintaining exactly what's going on. That's an A goal. I'm just living out an A goal in my physical health life. That's it.
Going through the motions.
Just going through the motions. A B-type goal is doing something that you think you can do. Now, I use this like home delivery service for food. I get this HelloFresh box that comes in. They send me a box, got all the ingredients in the box. They got all the meal cards in the box. I pour out the box. I look at the ingredients. I got a meal card and it says, do this, and then you'll have this meal. If you took away the meal cards, I wouldn't know how to cook shit.
That's why you have
That's why I got the meal
box.
cards. I've been doing it for like 3 years. I wouldn't know how to cook anything. So having these meal cards is like a B goal. I think I can do it. So it happens. Most people spend their entire life between A and B, and it just brings about the same results. Nothing's changing. We're growing laterally. A C-type goal is fantasy. It's doing something that you don't know how to do. And then someone might say, why would you want to do something that you don't know how to do? That's stupid. That doesn't fit into logic. You got to know how to do stuff, Michele. You got to know. Why? What about that guy, Edmund Hillary, climbed Mount Everest? The guy went to Nepal 3 times. No one's ever climbed Everest. No one ever did it. Everyone who tried died. C-type goal. It was a fantasy. What about those 2 bicycle mechanics, the Wright brothers? You can't fly. That's stupid. How are you going to do that? These guys figured it out. What about John F. Kennedy, who said, hey, 1962, we're going to the moon and we're going to do it in this decade. And everyone said, wow. And then he went back to his cabinet and said, hey, don't know how we're going to do this, but I said we're going to do it. It had never been done before. There's a great story about that. John F. Kennedy said that to the country, 1962, said we're going to do it in this decade. Went back to his cabinet. He sat down with his cabinet, got a long table, and he's got his closest advisors to his left and to his right. And down on the other end of the table are his scientists. And the chief scientist, who was seated directly opposed John F. Kennedy, was a guy named Wernher von Braun. And von Braun was someone who we recovered after World War II. We brought him over to the US, and he became a part of our aerospace engineering programs. Chief scientist for the United States in 1962. He's sitting at this table, and he goes, Wernher, what do we need to get to the moon? And everyone in the cabinet looks at John F. Kennedy, and everyone kind of looks down at Wernher von Braun. And von Braun is seated directly opposed from him. And his scientists look at him, and Wernher looks up at the president, and he puts his pen down, and he says, the will to do it. The will to do it. Remember we said, what do we need? Am I willing? Am I able? And we did it 7 years later, in 1969. It's just the will to do it. Wernher von Braun, he said something beautiful. He said, I have learned to use the word impossible with the greatest possible caution. A lot of people think shit is impossible. As long as you're willing and you're able, you can do it. It's fantasy. Everything started in the imagination. From flying to going to the moon to climbing Mount Everest. It's imagination.
They were fantasies.
They're fantasies. You gotta have fantasy.
So have your own fantasy, essentially.
Yes. This gold card, fantasy.
Fantasy.
It's just fantasy. Now it's gone. But it's fantasy. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just said I'm going to get to the moon. And I just needed the will to do it.
Yeah.
That's all. So different types of goals. Fantasy is important. It's going to bring about the results that we really want in life. And people might say, well, I don't really want anything. Yeah, I'm good. Well, that's bullshit. I think you do want things, but you're going to reject fantasy before giving it any serious thought. We reject fantasy. I rejected fantasy for a lot of years in my life. That's why I didn't leave the military when I think I should have left the military. I thought I got everything I needed, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I said, no, everything's good. I'll just be in the military. Everything's fine. I actually wanted more, but I didn't think I was worthy of getting more. It was all beliefs too. Mm-hmm. Big time beliefs.
So do you recommend, how many goals or fantasies should someone write down at one time or have at one time? And should they categorize them in a certain way? Back in the day, I used to work for Lululemon, and they're very big on goal setting for their employees, and they would make their employees categorize their own goals by, I think it was health, personal, and professional career. Mm-hmm. And I think they would do like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, or 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, something like that. Do you have any specific recommendations?
I like what you said about essentially having a personal goal and having a professional goal. At a minimum, I think that everyone would benefit from having a personal and a professional goal. Now, to go beyond that, we could possibly delve into this area of analysis paralysis, right? Like, oh my God, I need to have fantasy. I gotta have everything: health, wealth, love, happiness, family, friends, romance, fucking investments, and you don't do it. You just have all this shit and you don't do it, right? But starting somewhere is good, right? Do what you can, use what you have. That's it. Just wherever you are in life, start where you are, do what you can, use what you have. Start where you are, use what you can, do what you have. That's it. So having a personal, professional goal is good, and then maybe things come about that. After you kind of set a general direction, put that compass out and follow the compass needle and chase the North Star with just a personal, professional goal, everything else will come after that. Most people don't want to believe that. Well, I got to have other goals. I got to have all these other ones. No, you don't. Just start with one thing, and everything else comes about as a result of that one thing. Have one overarching goal. Have one just big fantasy goal. That's like pretty much what I do with businesses and like one-on-one stuff. But I just sit people down, and we just have to, you got to write. Remember we said, hey, everything starts with writing. Writing creates thinking. Thinking creates the image. A lot of people don't have images because they don't want to sit down and write. A lot of people don't have sitting down and writing power because they don't have assiduity. I remember, Zach knows what I'm talking about. So I shared this with Zach. I had a military instructor. He was a supervisor of mine. His name was Master Sergeant Jason Mitchell. And I remember I was telling him about what it is I want, the things I want to achieve. And he said, you got to have some assiduity, Rostami. And I said, what is assiduity?
I was going to ask you what assiduity was.
And he said, assiduity is sitting your fucking ass in that seat and doing the work.
Is that really what it is? It's not a real word.
It's a real word. It's just focusing. He says, sit your ass down and do the work. And I said, oh, you're right. And he was basically saying, hey, you got to sit down and write. It's essentially just having the diligence or the focus. And that's what I sit down with people and we just, hey, write it out. Hey, what is your goal? You don't have one? It's okay. What are your wants? I don't have any. Well, let's talk about it. Create a shopping list. Just imagine. Just let your mind run free.
So is this what you would recommend for people who say, maybe don't know what their passions are or what their goal? Because I know you emphasize like obviously living passionately and working passionately, but what about those that don't, it's not obvious to them?
For that, I would say it's as simple as sitting down and doing it. Because how much time does the average person create in a day or even in a week to intentionally sit down and just write? Maybe just not only write feelings and like, experiences, but writing what they want, goals. Very little. So just sitting down and just creating a shopping list, my personal wants, my professional wants. And again, this all goes back to the idea, like, what if someone sees that? Like, what if someone thinks it's stupid that I want a yacht? Well, fuck what someone thinks. This is your want. It's not theirs. So just write it down. Here, these are my personal wants, and just creating a list, because that will create the images. And if we can create the images, the emotions are going to get attached to the images. And as soon as those emotions get attached, it's going to change the micro. Micro changes the macro. Macro result, essentially. Action, reaction, result. So it just has to start there, having that assiduity. And that changed my life. He just said, hey, man, you got to sit down, you got to do the work. Sit your ass in the chair, do the work. Okay, boom. And I created a discipline out of doing that. And that's what I'm sharing now with other people.
So that's the first principle.
The first principle is
leading yourself.
Yes, having a worthy ideal is the first principle. The second ideal was kind of, we already a little bit, I think we touched on it with what was it? It was essentially guarding your mind. So guarding your mind.
Oh, right. Yeah. So that was the second one, which is essentially, sometimes we cut up these segments shorter. So if anyone didn't see the full episode, essentially saying protect your mind. And your mental state is how I would probably put it.
Yeah. And if there's anything else to be said about protecting your mind, guarding your mind, it's basically understanding this concept that not everyone gets a vote in what you should be doing. If you understand who you are, if you understand what it is that you desire, then you can align yourself with the people that might already have that thing or might be on the road. I don't give everyone a vote. This is not a democracy. So like knowing that some people have the right information, the right mentorship, the right guidance for me, and some people don't, again, neither good nor bad, right? I think it was Shakespeare. Nothing is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Hey, I'm not saying your advice is bad. I'm just saying that it's not congruent with what it is that I think I'm after. That's it. So guarding your mind is the second one. The third one is setting your values. Setting your values. And what I mean by that is having a core set of values, kind of like the core values I mentioned in the Air Force, integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Having your own personal set of core values that you follow every day. And what I do is something that I've talked about with vision boards and stuff like that, is essentially I have like my 7 things I'm going to do every day for myself that's going to get me to the results that I'm after. And my 7 things are basically this. Number 1, lead myself. Number 2, add value to people. Number 3, study and practice leadership. Number 4, read 10 to 15 pages of something positive every day. Number 5, speak compelling passages out loud. Number 6, memorize a quote. Number 7, intentionally grow. Those are my 7 things, my 7 values. And they could just be simple. It doesn't mean, I don't want people to like, hey, I'm gonna take a college class every day. It's not like that, right? just 7 simple things that are manageable so that you can do them. And then the little things, right? Just knowing that you accomplish it, making my bed, right? Just, hey, number 1, make my bed. Number 2, write something I'm grateful for. Number 3, I remember I was in a group, this guy, he had a great set of values for his mornings. I was teaching, he said, I do 3 things in the morning. I said, what are those 3 things? He basically said, when I wake up, the first thing I do is I set my intention on one thing. I'm going to do that thing today. Number 2, I forgive myself of one thing. I'm going to let that thing go. And then number 3 is he said, what was it? So it was intention, let something go, and then I don't know, maybe drink orange juice or something.
Have a Bloody Mary.
Yeah, how about a Mary? Yeah, it was something. But he had 3 things he does every day. Oh, what it was is express gratitude. So like basically, set my intention. I'm going to do that one thing every day. Let go of something. Forgive myself, and then express gratitude for one thing. Those are values. I think that's 3 of 7 right there. So setting your values, and I think those are important to revisit every morning, because when we wake up in the mornings, our brains are actually operating at different wave cycles. We're the most impressionable that we're going to be over the course of our entire day in those first 20 minutes of our day. So if I could get up and listen to something positive, or I can get up and read some of my values or write something down, that's going to stick with me the entire day. So if those things, that 20 minutes can consist of those 7 things that I'm going to do, sometimes I just look at my vision board and I just say, hey, lead myself, add value to people, study and practice leadership. And I go through that thing, just like my own personal mantra. That's effective for me.
So how do you figure out what your values are? Because some of those sound like kind of to-do items.
Yeah, there is a little difference there, isn't there? So how do you figure out what your values are? It goes back to, again, understanding myself. What did I come here to do? What are people? One thing I help people with is kind of finding that purpose, finding what it is that their gift is, right? There's a lot of ways you could help people find their gift. You can help yourself, read books, things like that, and finding your gift. The 5 things I talk about in finding your gift is, it centers on knowing yourself, maybe personality tests, knowing that you're an introvert, extrovert. That's a pretty big deal. The second thing is, what did you grow up around? Like, what did your parents do? What is your mental mind map, essentially? The third thing is, what do your enemies compliment you on? Because, friends and family are biased. A lot of people are going to compliment you,
Right.
and they're going to tell you what you want to hear. But what do your enemies compliment you on? What do I mean by that? Basically this. When I was an instructor in the military, I won with the students. It was great. But I had peers that I taught with that didn't like me. And I sucked with time management and organizational skills. I was terrible at those things. So I remember whenever someone wanted to criticize me on one of those 2 things, they would always open up with something like this. Michele, look, you're really great with the students, but, and then we criticize. Or, Michele, you're a great instructor, you're a great speaker. However, you know what? That's good. Good criticism, good feedback. But the most important feedback was the first part. If the people that didn't like me were telling me I was good at speaking, thanks. I'll take that.
Oh,
I'll put that.
interesting.
You see what I mean? So what are your enemies telling you? And then the 4th one is basically saying, hey, what do you sit down and talk about with your friends on a Friday night when money isn't an issue, when time isn't an issue, when no one's after anything, or no one isn't after anything? You're sitting there and being with people. What is it that you center your passion on? And I think the last one is, it's basically, what is it that you wanted to do when you were 14 years old? Because that'll say a lot about what your passions are. I think when I was 14, I'm like, dude, I wanted to be a teacher of some sort. I wanted to be like a public speaker, because I saw so many great teachers doing it. I had an English teacher, he would recite poetry during the lessons, and he just knew how to like really hold the attention of a crowd. And he was compassionate, and he knew how to get back to the lessons. Dead Poet Society, all that great stuff. So those are the 5 things I help people with when it comes to finding that purpose. But that knowing your purpose, knowing yourself, is the prerequisite to setting those values. And then that helped me create my own personal mantra. Now, I told you about the 7 things I'm going to do every day, but my personal mantra is, I'm here to impact people's minds, to touch their hearts, and to ignite their spirits. That's why I showed up on this earth. That's the thing I'm going to live out. So if an opportunity comes to me, if someone says, hey man, can you speak to this group or whatever it is, I always take that and I run it through the filter of my personal mantra. Hey, is it impacting people's minds? Is it touching their hearts? Is it igniting their spirits? Yes? Dude, let's do it. No? Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm a no for that one. And it helps you kind of just like filter out what is congruent with your life and what isn't.
And this is the third principle.
That's the 3rd principle in the 6 when it comes to leading yourself.
So it sounds like you would probably recommend doing these in order. Is that
Yeah.
right? You probably want the goals before you have the values for the goals.
Yeah.
And then the mantras.
Yeah, they're building blocks. They definitely
Gotcha.
do build on each other.
And how do you come up with the mantras?
Well, the mantra's like, it's really taking what it is that you think your gift or your purpose is and just stripping it down to like a one-liner. If you use a business cards are usually great examples for this. If I could look at your business card and I could see in just a one-liner what you do, you did it right. You did it right. I don't want to have to think. I just want to look at it. Michele, let's just say Michele is a social media marketeer. She helps restaurants gain business by leveraging social media. Oh, that's pretty simple. Maybe that's the purpose. Maybe that's the mission statement. But being able to just articulate that thing to just one line so that you can just revisit that thing for yourself. Hey, what am I here to do? What am I here to do? Impact people's minds, touch their hearts, ignite their spirits.
What you're here to do.
What am I here to do? That's my thing. That's my jam. If I can line everything up in my life to reflect that, well, everything else is going to fall in place. It's like, what's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people? Successful people go after the goal, the mission, the vision, the purpose, what their gift is, what they came here to do. And all the byproducts, if you look at it, successful, the goal, they're going straight for the goal. All the byproducts, all the unintended consequences are the money, the time off, the freedom, the travel, the podcasts, the amazing relationships. Unsuccessful people, they don't go for the goal, they go for the byproducts. And then they wonder, why am I unhappy? Well, you went for the byproducts.
They're going for the money. They're going for the lifestyle instead of going for the goal.
The goal, going for the actual thing that brings about fulfillment, satisfaction, purpose in life. And a goal is different from an objective. In the military, we use objectives a lot. Goal, objective, target. 3 completely different things.
Goal, objective, target.
Target.
Do you mind breaking those down?
Yeah, I mean, objective is, let's start with target, right? I mean, I've thrown a lot of darts. I've hit some dartboards. I've never hit the bullseye very often. Not really a goal. A goal is essentially, that is the thing in its entirety. A target is just, that's the general area. An objective is just the general area. It's really just, it's not defining the actual end state that brings about what we want. So knowing that the goal is that centering piece, it is the bullseye essentially. So using these mantras, using those 7 principles, using all these things as a way to reach the goal and not just throw the dart and hit the dartboard. Because just hitting the dartboard may not necessarily bring you what it is that is going to make you fulfilled and happy in life.
So the goal is the North Star, essentially.
It's the North Star.
And the targets are, you're saying those are, would you say like the different ways that you're trying to reach the goal?
Yeah, it could be like micro things that you're trying to accomplish, little things. Maybe a target for me this week, like we mentioned, is I'm speaking to some high school students. That's a pretty good target. It's not my goal. It's just a good target to land in, because if I could land there, that might bring the next thing about and I could reach more students.
I see. So it's going to be such a...
What's that?
My friends keep making fun of me because I'm like obsessed with this documentary called Free Solo. Have you seen it, or do you know what it's about? It's about the first free solo rock climber who climbed El Capitan, which is just like insane, right? So anyway, in regards to what we're talking about, it's this huge mountain, and they show us how there's different, milestones on the little trail that he takes up. So that kind of makes me think like he has a bunch of mini targets.
Yeah.
Or maybe the goal at the top.
Yeah.
Is that essentially?
That's exactly what that is. The way I think about it too is like when I'm going through some tough training in the military, I just try to get to breakfast. And if I can get to breakfast, my next target is lunch. And then the next target is dinner. And the day's over.
Or I was training for a marathon, and sometimes you would just go mile by
Just a
mile,
mile.
just next mile, just one
Yes.
mile.
Yeah, that's it. What is it? I think the saying goes, by the yard is hard, but inch by inch, everything is a cinch. Just me. And a lot of people, and we're going to talk about this too, a lot of people are very impatient. They just want to hit a home run every time. Everything they do, they want to fucking hit it out of the park. Dude, that's not life. That's just not life. Sometimes you got to hit a few base hits. Sometimes you got to hit a few jumpers. Like, that's it. Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan because he hit a lot of jumpers really well. He didn't hit a bunch of threes. He didn't slam dunk a lot. He just hit a bunch of 16, 18 footers. That was it. But a lot of people get up to the bat and they just swing the fucking hardest. They think they're Barry Bonds without the steroids. Zach is laughing over there. But yeah, everyone wants to hit it so hard, but it's like maybe hitting it hard is not the most effective strategy.
Do you think that's how people burn out?
Hell yeah, that's how people burn out. I'm gonna pin that because that's exactly why people burn out. People are what I call, a lot of people are, they're basically patiently impatient.
Yeah.
They spend a lot of time going, you know what, I'm gonna start first of the year. New Year's resolution. I love that thing. I'm gonna start that in 3 weeks. Why not now? And then when they start, they go way too, hey, I'm gonna start going to the gym. Haven't been to the gym in like 6 years, but I'm just gonna start in 3 weeks. Gym day comes around and they just burn out. They go way too hard. They get injured and they go, this is no use. I'm not seeing any results. Dude, you've only been to the gym like twice. Like, really? And you want to see results already?
Yeah.
And people burn out, and people, like, they set really hard targets and they just say, hey, it's not working. But that's what it means to be patiently impatient. Switching it around, being impatiently patient. That's a big deal breaker.
So Gary Vaynerchuk, and also I think Grant Cardone is kind of the same way. They really push for giving your dreams absolutely everything you have. Literally 18-hour days, no weekends, no work-life balance. Like, that's what it takes. But then you hear some people say that a work-life balance is important. So what do you think? I'm assuming it's more of a balance.
So, Zach, if you look at Gary Vaynerchuk,
Zach is the invisible third person in this episode.
Dude, Zach and I have gone so many times back and forth about this. Listening to Gary Vaynerchuk is like fucking taking advice from a cab driver in New York City. Like, that's all I'm hearing, right? And I look at the guy, I'm like,
he'd probably love that.
I don't want to emulate anything he has. He doesn't look like he's in good health. He looks stressed the fuck out. I'm like, I don't want that. So sure, maybe if there is a thesis and that's, hey, give it everything you got. Every single day, 10x. Just the 10x.
Well, that's literally Grant Cardone's book.
I've read it. It's a great book.
Yeah.
If that's the thesis and the antithesis is do nothing, I don't want to live life in any extreme ever. I don't ever want to live life on any of the fringes because I think this is an error and I think this is an error. I got to find my own happy medium. If this is thesis and this is antithesis, I want to find my synthesis. Because trying to be like Grant Cardone or Gary Vee, first of all, we have no idea what their personal family life is like. I don't know what his relationship is like with his wife, his children. I don't know what Grant's. I mean, you see a lot of things on social media. Got, power couple, cool. Everything I see on that screen, I'm going to call bullshit on first. I'd rather call bullshit on it and then know if it's true later. But to take it all for face value, error. Just a fucking dumbass error in judgment. Because the things I put up on social media, the things everyone puts up, is not necessarily a direct reflection of reality.
It's most likely not.
It's just most likely not. And we know that as human beings, we have cognitive biases. And people know how to play to those cognitive biases. So if I know, like, you take a Tai Lopez, for example.
Oh, yeah.
The guy's a, social media, he's a mogul, right? He's just got all these social media things. There's a reason why you always see him with a babe in like all of his videos, because that's a fucking cognitive bias. That's me going, oh, he obviously has a beautiful woman next to him. That means what he's saying is accurate. He's talking about the truth. I need to listen. And whatever he says to do, I'm going to do. He got me. He done got me. That was it. It's pretty easy after that. So knowing that this thing is a vehicle, it is a conduit to be used with those cognitive biases is a good way to navigate through the social media plane. Remember we talking about guarding your mind? Mm-hmm. People are going to play to that. People will play to that. So going back to Gary Vee, going back to Grant Cardone, sure, if you want to 10x it, if you want to go all out on your dream, be prepared to lose some things too.
Yeah.
You just got to be okay with losing some things. Some personal relationships are going to crumble in some other areas in your life, right? The Greek philosophers talked about 4 pillars of the good life. They basically said, hey, health, wealth, love, happiness. That's it. You can take care of those areas in life, everything's going to be great. Well, if you just go after wealth and you don't really focus on the health piece, like a Gary Vee, or the love and the relationships, or the happiness, that's not a great life. I want more balance in my life. And then, when it comes to Gary Vee and you got like Grant Cardone and you got Tony Robbins, all highly successful people, and I respect them. I respect the level of energy they're exerting into the universe, and I respect the level of knowledge that they bring to the table. But I have to be able to step out and understand that they're just professional dopamine sellers. That's all they're doing.
You think?
They are fucking selling cocaine on the highest scale. And it just, when I watch it sometimes, people watch it and they're like, oh, it feels so good. It just feels good. Listening to you say that. Because self-development is another area of life where it's just like, hey, let me target everyone that doesn't think they're enough, first of all. And let me just make them feel good. And you don't really hear the action steps. If you watch just one video of Gary Vee, it's basically, here's what he's doing for like 2 minutes out of every 8-minute video. just got to grind. You just got to grind. Just kill it. He's just fucking on his phone. That's it. And everyone's going, yeah, you know what? I like that. That's good. That I believe in that. So if I just sit there and I'm just grinding, I'm doing good. That's not same, different, not same. So this idea that they're just like selling this dope, I like being able to help people feel good. That's why I got into speaking. That's why I got into training. I love creating an environment. I love creating connection. I love that feeling of making people happy. I don't want to be their dopamine seller. I want to show them how to build their own dopamine. If Gary Vee and Grant Cardone are professional cocaine dealers, I want to show people how to make their own cocaine at home. That's essentially what I'm doing. That's essentially what I'm up to. I'll give you an example. When I was a military instructor, I got to take people for 24 days at a time, all 16 of these airmen, and I got to do this experience with them. And I got to motivate them. I got to inspire them. I got to really pour in everything into them. Day of training 24 rolls around. It's grad night. They get to suit up. They got their nice blues on. They get their graduation certificate. They see it. Hey, take, shake, salute. Just, shake the hand. And then they leave. And then we, have a kumbaya. Loved it. Stay in touch. I get to take my week-long break before the next class starts. They go back to their work centers in the military. So they got to go back to the normal. They did their professional military education, back to work. Inevitably, always, after every class ends, I get messages, I get calls, I get texts. People go, Michele, I'm back at work and it just sucks. I'm not motivated. It wasn't like being in your class. I miss that motivation. What gives? What's going on? And I'm like, dude, do you remember what we talked about? He said, what? I said, the biggest mistake that people make is believing that motivation is someone else's job. It's believing that it's someone else's responsibility to motivate me. And you made that mistake. You forgot to motivate yourself. It's a daily game. You got to read. You got to listen to things. You got to have conversations with great people. That motivates you. That keeps you inspired. But I work 8 hours a day. What are you doing for the other 16? Well, I sleep. Okay, can you whittle that down to like 6 hours? Now what are you doing with that 10? What's going on? I think it was Jim Rohn. Mm-hmm. He said, hey, they say motivation doesn't last, but neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it every day. People call me and text me, hey, why do I smell, Sergeant Rostami? It's been 2 weeks since I left your class. Why do I smell? Well, because you didn't take a bath for 2 weeks. How about take a bath? How about inspire yourself? And by inspiring yourself, by maybe reading the stories of people who have gone before you. That's what I loved about instructing. I got to teach the lesson principles and concepts, but I also got to talk about amazing people who have had stories, the autobiographies. And when you hear the stories of people who had nothing and they made something of themselves, they attracted the right people, they had a goal in mind for their life, it's inspiring and it makes you go, damn, they were willing, they were able. If it's possible for them, I could do it too. Inspiration occurs.
So how do you think you're different than these guys?
I like the action steps. When I sit down with people one-on-one, when I sit down with groups and we have a few hours to just have a workshop mm-hmm. or just something together, I like to share these principles and I like to talk about these concepts, but I like to sit everyone down. We do some assiduity. Like we do mm-hmm. the work. We get those asses in those
And
chairs.
You don't think that they do enough action steps?
I don't think that Gary Vee is a professional action seller. Mm-hmm. He's just doing his thing and someone's filming him. That's it. He's not a professional teacher, but that's okay. If you want a professional teacher, go to school. If you want a saint, go to church. Mentors, the people who are actually doing stuff, the people who have what it is that you want, that I want, they're busy and they're kind of rough around the edges. Master Sergeant Jason Mitchell, the guy who taught me about assiduity, he was not a professional teacher. The onus was on me to learn what it is I needed to learn from him. So just getting around people and knowing, again, what is my goal? What is my worthy ideal? What is my purpose? What are my values? How am I guarding my mind? If I know how to do these things, if I understand these things, now I could find the right mentors that might have what it is that I'm after. And it's like the Karate Kid, right? You got Daniel-san, you got Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi wasn't a professional teacher. He wasn't sitting him down for lessons. He was just living. He was going through the motions. And without even knowing it, Daniel-san was being imparted what he needed to know. It was an iconic scene in the movie when he just said, hey, listen, wax the car. And he goes like this. All right, now paint the fence. And then Mr. Miyagi starts throwing punches, and Daniel-san is blocking the punches because he learned how to wax the car and paint the fence. So mentors have the practical knowledge, but you got to have some things that you're bringing to the table. You got to be a diligent student. You got to know your values. You got to know what it is that you want, because people don't want their time wasted. What is the saying? When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. Well, if that's true, then the inverse is also true. When the student is not ready, the teacher will disappear. Stop fucking wasting my time. And I've had people disappear on me because I was wasting their time. I didn't have all my goals set. I didn't have all my values. I wasn't guarding my mind. I wasn't leading myself.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the episode. If you're interested in contributing to the conversation and supporting the show, there's 2 easy things you can do. 1, click subscribe, and 2, visit our Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the Exploring Minds community.